When I say integrative health and medicine, what does that really mean to you? As we strive to be more aware of natural and holistic health and wellness solutions, integrative medicine is at the forefront of providing patients a more personalized plan to uncover underlying causes and developing evidence-based treatment plans that have a whole body approach that includes a balanced lifestyle. Our guest on the show today initially pursued a path in traditional Western medicine, but as her own health issues began to be evident, she took a step back to assess what would get to the cause of her symptoms rather than masking the problem. Health, wellness, career, family, life, and the better side of 50. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome to the show, everyone. I have to say, I love it when I find a guest who can provide a different perspective on addressing midlife health. Dr. Katie Takayasu is an MD and also has an MBA, which I find impressive. She practices as an integrative medicine doctor. She is also the author of the book Plants First, A Physician's Guide to Wellness Through a Plant-Forward Diet. Welcome, Dr. Katie.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
It's so nice to have you here. We found out that we have something in common. We're both Ohio girls.
I love a Midwestern connection. I think my Midwest roots keep me grounded in a way. It's always nice to meet someone else who has that same sense of grounding from a younger age.
Oh, it's great. Speaking of that, I would love for you to tell the audience a little bit more about you, where you're from. Obviously, you're from Ohio, and your educational background, because I think that's important.
Definitely. I grew up in the farmlands, literally, of the Midwest, in a small town of maybe 7,000 people, the daughter of a family physician in the community. I knew from a really early age that being a doctor was something that seemed not only really cool, but also a way for me to give back to the community. I went to the University of Michigan for undergrad and did a business undergrad. That's how I got my feet wet in that mental space. And then when I had a choice about where to go to med school, I chose Wright State University in Ohio because they had a joint MD MBA program. I spent 5 years there doing that. It was actually a really great way to spread out the intensity of med school mixed with this different part of my brain that still knows how to function, and actually I use a lot on a daily basis because a lot of our interactions really are people-based. In medicine, we're taught so much science, but in business, we're taught not only numbers, but we're also taught about how to present, how to interact with people, how to get things done. I think it's been a really valuable education, and I really credit Wright State for giving me that opportunity. But when I was in medical school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I got married during medical school, and I remember when I was trying to pick my medical specialty, I remember thinking that when I got to my family medicine rotation, that it felt like I was putting on my wedding dress. I looked in the mirror and I was like, yep, this is what I'd always thought I would look like, and that was the dress I bought. And so that's ultimately why I chose family medicine, because it just felt like that's where I was supposed to be. But I ended up doing family medicine, a residency in New York at Columbia. That was a whole different can of worms because it was inner city, it was working with a disadvantaged population. It was just a real change of pace for us. While I was there, residency is so intense. That was when a lot of the things in my life started because I was able to hold on to my stress pretty well up until that point. But when the body is just so tired and stretched beyond its ability, our coping mechanisms, I think, just if they're not good, it can fail us. And that's where I really just developed a bit of anxiety. It's where I started my first bout of insomnia. And at the same time, I was married, wanted to have some kids, and realized that my period wasn't coming regularly. Getting pregnant would be a big issue. That is really where I discovered integrative medicine. Combined with the idea of not being able to run for exercise because I had injured my knee running this silly half marathon, I discovered yoga. In my own way, built the pillars of a good integrative medicine wellness for myself. And it became stop eating the hospital food, start packing your lunch. It was trying to get as much sleep as I could. It was gentle exercise, not exercise that actually raised my cortisol higher, which is very efficient, but often can be detrimental. And then it was really listening to that spiritual side of myself combined with acupuncture. I remember being on that acupuncture table thinking, oh my goodness, I have got to bring this to other people. This feels amazing. Then I ended up doing fellowship at Stanford Hospital in Connecticut. I've loved my practice ever since. 10 years I've been doing this, and I feel like what I do is really meaningful to patients, but it's also meaningful to me. It's the way I like to practice medicine, and it's calm and it's reassuring. It's science-backed. It really brings the patient what they want. I bring it full circle, both with my personal history, but also professionally.
So much to unpack here.
I know, it's a lot. This story is big.
First of all, getting an MBA while you were in medical school, this was some of the things that as I was in the medical field that I would hear the doctors that I was friends with. One of the things that they would always say was, I wish someone would have taught me more business skills while I was in school so I would learn the other side of managing a practice.
Yeah.
The big benefits there for you.
Oh, totally. And I mean, I credit seeing my dad. My dad has been in solo practice for almost the entirety of my life. He does it really successfully and he enjoys it. Seeing that model, I think, was really helpful. Getting coached by your parents. It's hard to listen to them, I think, when we're in our younger years. But don't you reflect back now and think, oh God, like they actually know everything. I wish I would have listened to them sooner.
I know. I think I've become my mother too, which is
right, totally.
the other piece of this that,
yeah.
My dad was a doctor as well.
Oh, cool.
When you were telling your dad, look, I'm doing acupuncture, I'm doing all this, what was his reaction? Because he was trained more in traditional Western medicine.
My parents have always been really supportive. I have to really credit them along the way because I was one of the first to come in the family of all the kids. I paved a lot of that way. And every time that I had an idea of something, they never discouraged. Even if they thought maybe that was a different or a funny idea, they never discouraged. It was always, well, do what you want if you think that's going to make you feel happy, but also help you get to where you want to be professionally. And so they were very supportive along the way. And I really credit them with opening their horizons to other ideas. But yeah, I mean, it's a little bit crazy to think about sticking tiny little needles in people when that wasn't something that we grew up understanding. And I didn't even know about until I was in my 30s. It's definitely a different way of thinking, but things have changed so much in the last 10 years. We've really come into this place where now my biggest referral source for patients is other physicians who recognize this patient has this going on with them, but I can't treat this with narcotics or pain medications or maybe even just regular physical therapy, which have been our tools for a long time. They're really asking for patients to get other treatments, and I'm happy to provide those.
I love your own personal story and how that got the wheels going in regard to your own health. It's a domino effect, and we often wait till we're struggling and then we think, oh, we make life changes now.
100% true. You're like, oh, wait, now the ship's really going down. Now I really need to do something.
Right. I think what's great about having you on the show is, hey, there's stuff to be proactive about so that we don't let stress and all those other things in life get to us to the point where we need help.
100%. I think what you're also bringing up is this idea of we get these tiny little warning signals from our body, and often we are just too busy to pay attention to them. It's like when you eat something at a restaurant and you're like, man, I don't really feel that great, but whatever, I guess move on, right? That was easy and I'm done with it. Or you shortchange your sleep, or you notice that things in your household are becoming a little bit unglued. We often just ignore that because we're too busy. But it's those tiny little knocks at the door that really matter, because at some point in time, it's not a little knock. It's the door is coming down and you're going down with it. That's when we start to listen. I encourage people, once you start to feel those little knocks, that you start to listen, because if you don't, it's all trouble.
It is. I think integrative medicine is so great because it gives people an option for a more holistic approach to address some of these things too. Because people may not want to start with medication and surgery and all these other things. They want other options. I think this is terrific. I did have a question for you, Katie, about how long has integrative medicine been a discipline?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, really, has it been a discipline for centuries and millennia? Because what we're doing is coming back to a more natural way of doing things. If you talked to your mother-in-law or generations past, I'm sure if you asked them what they maybe used for menstrual cramps or perimenopausal symptoms or to bring on labor or to help with an achy knee, they would bring you back to the ancient science. And they'd say, oh, my grandmother would always make a poultice. She would put arnica on her knee. You know what I mean? That's where integrative medicine comes back. So while it's been a discipline and a fellowship for a little while, it really is ancient medicine. I think that's another reason that I feel really connected to it, is that it's something that feels a bit more natural and less medication or less surgery based. And while I am an MD and definitely believe that there is a place for medications, I take them myself. They work great, and have had surgery or procedures, things like steroid injections. They work great when they're done in the right way. I choose to use other methods to manage my own health issues because I just like the way that it feels in my body to have those options.
Terrific. I've not covered gut health and pelvic pain on this podcast, but I read about it all the time. It's a hot topic. What do you see most often in your practice regarding people with gut issues?
Oh, I see a lot of gut issues and a lot of maldigestion. Probably most often what I see is that people have symptoms that are really bothersome and really get in the way of them living a higher quality of life. They go to see their primary doctor or they go to see a gastroenterologist. They get the rule out. It's not colon cancer. It's not peptic ulcer disease, whatever the big things we don't want to miss are. But they still have symptoms, and the very best that they can get offered is a medication to help with constipation or something to slow down their digestive transit and make them an antispasmodic. These medicines all have side effects to them. Ultimately, what they don't do is they don't get to the root cause of the problem. I think that is where we really struggle in Western medicine, is that we have treatments for things, but we don't always understand what is the root cause. Integrative medicine really comes back to the root cause. If I see someone with digestive issues, we're talking about everything from what's your morning routine like so that we're making time so that we can poop. We're talking about food. We're talking about what are the supplements you've tried, the medications you've tried that did or didn't work, and then I'm trying to figure out why or why not those things worked. We're really trying to get to the root cause and fix the microbiome, and that generally is what's off, is that we end up taking ibuprofen a lot for headaches or knee pain, or we go to Mexico and we get a rogue bacteria and we just don't really realize it. Or we keep taking antibiotics because we get recurrent ear infections. And all these things challenge the microbiome over the course of time. And it's like a teeter-totter. It's back and forth, back and forth. And at some point in time, the gut's like, yep, I can hold on. I can make this work. And at some point then, the teeter-totter gets very out of balance and the gut's like, nope, nope, nope. I'm going to give you bloating, gas, diarrhea, abdominal pain, other symptoms, food intolerances. The gut just can't hold on. Our job then is to figure out how do we repair the gut and then set it up for success going forward. A very common patient might be someone who's had loose stools. They've had them for years, and it gets in the way of them being able to exercise or go see a friend or take a walk because they're worried they're going to soil their pants. And the best thing that a doctor has to offer is, I can give you Imodium. That's the best I can do. And I think we can do better.
Wow. Is it that you would maybe do a food elimination type of diet, or would you add probiotics and some other things to their regimen?
It's a good question. I really don't like to take food away from people. And I also think that that breeds a lot of, this thing is good for me, this thing is bad for me. Whereas all food is fine in the right proportion. It's not okay to eat Doritos all the time. It's not a good thing. But if it's the Super Bowl and you really like Doritos and you want to have a normal portion of them, maybe that's fine for you. I really don't like to take away food from people. However, sometimes people do need to have a little bit more of that diet that allows for more pure foods. Sometimes an elimination diet could be helpful. Probiotics could be really great for you, or they could be a total disaster, and it depends on what the microbiome is doing. If you've got a lot of microbes hanging out in your gut, then adding more fuel to the fire with probiotics is going to make you feel worse. However, if you don't have enough bacteria, you're actually deficient because you've killed them all off with antibiotics, say, then repositioning with a bit of a probiotic would be helpful. Really, it's about listening to the symptoms. It's about potentially doing some work and finding out in the microbiome with some testing what's actually hanging out there. Then choosing the right herbs to potentially bring someone back into balance, and then repleting the probiotic situation. It's variable depending on what someone's symptoms are, but it's a great question.
How often is it diet or your microbiome's off versus stress or a true autoimmune issue?
It's difficult for me to put percentages to that. However, I will tell you that one of the things that I utilize with patients is something called gut-based hypnotherapy. It's been studied and we know that it works. It's not unpleasant. It's like actually really nice. There's nice apps out there that will give you 15 to 20 minutes of a meditation exercise. It's really pleasant. It's wonderful. It's just making space in your life for 15 or 20 minutes. But literally, it doesn't matter if it's a college student that I'm working with or someone who's had IBS symptoms and is in their 70s. Hands down, if people commit to 15 to 20 minutes a day, most days of the week, you don't have to be perfect about anything. It is one of the most revolutionary solvative problems for people because we carry so much stress in our gut. Everybody's got their place in their body where stress goes. Some of us, it's our low back. Some of it's the gut. Some of us get headaches. Name your symptom, honestly. If you are able to really work with your nervous system to dial down that stress response and dial up the rest and digest response, you're going to get a better output from your body. If you've done all the things and you're still struggling, that might be a piece that's really helpful to you. But it's not an easy piece. It's much easier to take a probiotic pill in the morning than it is to sit down or lie down and do 15 to 20 minutes of meditation.
I need to do that.
You would love it. Honestly, I did. I try to do everything I recommend to patients just once so I at least know what it is. But I did the 12-week course with the hypnotherapy. Honestly, I thought my own digestion was better. I didn't start from a bad place to begin with, thankfully. I've repaired my own digestion over time, too. That was another pearl of Dr. Katie's history.
Oh, that's great.
I've literally lived it all in a short span of time.
That was going to be my next question, but you answered it. The mind-body-spirit connection and why it's important and why it's a component of treating your patients. And you really answered that. You've got to make sure things are okay up here in the head because it can affect all aspects of our health.
I think so much about the body being like a symphony. And if the conductor, the brain, is not helping the whole body to stay connected or the symphony to stay connected, it's going to sound terrible. But it will also sound terrible if the violin section is playing out of tune. It's really about the pieces for sure, but it's also about what's happening on those upper levels. And that's why when I wrote the book Plants First, the editors really wanted me to write a book about a physician's perspective on a plant-forward diet. But I went back and said, that's part of it. That's a huge piece. Nutrition is everything. But there's also these other pillars of like, how are people sleeping? How are people moving their bodies? And how are people paying attention to their spiritual selves? Thankfully, they let me pull in those other pillars as well, because it's not just about food. Digestive issues are not just about what you're putting down the hatch, but that's a huge piece of it for sure. But it could also be related to how one is taking care of his or her body. And honestly, that same mentality goes to every part of the body. And we often think about our body in parts and not the whole. But the whole is an important place to stem from, and that's what I'm trying to get after in integrative medicine.
We all know we should be eating more cleanly. That's no secret. It's out there. It's in our faces every single day. And I think it's a great message. But in your book, you talk a little bit about cleaning up the hormonal cascades.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you could go into that a little bit more, since a lot of us are in peri or in full-blown menopause.
I always joke about perimenopause, like this is the best 7 to 10 or more years of a woman's life because it's a no-joke time frame. I was just talking to one of the women at my workout class this morning afterwards that one of the reasons we like to do resistance training and build muscles is because things just kind of go south once you get into the space of not having as much testosterone on board. And then imbalances of estrogen and progesterone and other hormones really make it difficult. But one of the things to understand in the body is that it's a symphony of hormonal signaling. And I don't pretend to understand all of it, but I know a lot of it. One of the most important pieces is to think about how stressed we are, because if all of our hormones, or many of them, are stemming from some of the same substrates upstream, and we're very busy making cortisol because our body thinks we have to run from the saber-toothed tiger literally every day because work is so stressful, or the kids are all over us, or your body feels like it's in a blender, which is how my brain actually felt for the whole month of September. It just felt like everything was swirling around me. We're busy creating all that cortisol to help our bodies respond, and then we necessarily are not producing other hormones in the body. It's no secret that when we're very stressed, our sex drive goes down. Our ability to actually work out and lift the same amount of weight goes down. Our ability to tolerate our foods correctly goes down. Nutrition is one way of making sure that our body knows that it's that we've got it. Like, this is a safe space. And I think about the foods that I eat being tasty, of course. Like, I'm a foodie. I love food. But I also think so much about what message am I sending my body? When I choose things that are more plant forward, that are more healthy, are more fiber rich and satisfying from a fat, protein, fiber perspective, and I find that right balance, I know that at least that one message, I can't control the other messages that might come at me through a day, but at least that one message is on target for me. We had talked about a little bit before we hopped on here about self-care. Eating regular, good, nutritious meals is actually a part of my self-care, and I spend a lot of time prioritizing that. And it takes a lot of time. Let's be honest. Being in the kitchen is no joke.
No, it's not. It's staying creative. I oftentimes feel when I'm cooking that I'm sneaking stuff in because I want my husband to eat better. This is the one meal during the day I can control for him.
Yeah.
And we've made great strides. I mean, great strides.
I love that you're trying to sneak things in. I do the same thing. Yesterday I was making a really delicious bread that actually I put on my blog, which is on drkatie.com, and my kids were helping me, and you can use flax or chia eggs in the bread. And my son was like, God, do we have to use chia? And I was like, oh, babe, this is what holds it together. This is what's going to make it so it doesn't fall apart. If he hadn't seen me do it, he would have never known there were chia seeds in this bread. You can't see them. You can't taste them. This is the way you sneak in that extra nutrition for your family and for yourself without making it feel like you're depriving yourself. Who doesn't want to eat pumpkin bread? It's amazing.
Or banana bread with those bananas that I have in my freezer.
Yeah.
I'm going to use them this time. I promise. They're not going to get thrown away this time.
Exactly. Using those ingredients that are wholesome, like you look at a banana, you look at a chia seed, you know where that came from. I don't know where all-purpose flour exactly comes from. I'm not milling that in my backyard to know where it's coming from. Whenever we're choosing ingredients that are wholesome and we recognize it's coming from nature, we're making a better choice for ourselves. And doing that in the right mix of fiber, fat, and protein is a really important part of that.
This brings up a great question. When you're at the grocery store every week, what are the 4 or 5 things that are in your cart every single week?
For me, I like greens a lot, and even though we're kind of transitioning into a colder season, I still like a salad. I just transition it over the course of the seasons to match the weather. This time of year, I'm moving into really more warm salads, but I really love some kind of bitter green. So sometimes it's arugula, sometimes it's Swiss chard, sometimes it's kale. There's like 50 million different types of kale. Sometimes it's watercress, but I really love a bitter green. There's definitely bitter greens, and I find that those big containers of them are really convenient because they stay pretty well in the fridge and you can mix and match as you see fit. But I do like that little bit of crunch and bitterness. That's super supportive to the liver. I think the other thing that's always in the cart is coconut yogurt. I am totally obsessed with non-dairy yogurt in the form of coconut yogurt. There's a couple of brands out there that when you read the ingredient label, you're like, oh, this doesn't really have that many ingredients. And I think the probiotics are really helpful. I also think that it's very satiating in the morning. Having a significant amount of fat in the morning at the breakfast is important because studies have shown that if we eat more fat at breakfast, and more protein to be honest, but fat too, that we're more satiated during the day and that actually we consume fewer calories. That was definitely shown. Another thing that's always in the cart is a little bit of kombucha. I have grown to really love kombucha over the course of time and gotten out of the habit of drinking wine. I find now that I'm in my 40s, alcohol doesn't feel like it did before, especially wine. It just always seems to be keeping me awake, making me hot and sweaty at night. It just doesn't feel good. At dinner time, want to drink something different. I've drank water all day. And so getting into a lower sugar kombucha are some of the ways that I get around that wanting of a cocktail or a glass of wine at dinner time. Those are some of the things that are never missed in my house. Whoever's doing the grocery shopping, it's like, do we have greens for mom? Do we have coconut yogurt? And do we have kombucha?
Being sober October, a lot of people look for alternatives to their evening wine, and kombucha, I didn't even think about that, but that would be an alternative.
Totally. I just do maybe 4 ounces. I'm not drinking a ton of it because it does have some sugar to it, but also because if you drink too much, it can certainly give you some digestive issues. Easing into it is important. And if kombucha doesn't taste inherently great to someone, you can also doctor it up a little bit. You could cut it with a little bit of seltzer. You could add a nice squeeze of lemon or lime, and you could ease yourself into it. That titration of things that's a little bit different to you, that a taste that you're not used to, you can work your way into it. I also think another option that's tasty is getting some tart cherry juice. And you can find a really nice organic one that's very potent. And you maybe need an ounce or 2 ounces at most, and you could put some seltzer in it, put a little sprig of rosemary and a little squeeze of lemon. And there's another idea for something that would help give you that cocktail feel, but also help your sleep because tart cherry juice is a natural source of melatonin. So that could be a nice one in the evening. There's a couple of other alcohol-free alternatives in my book, Plants First. There's a hot toddy that I concocted that feels like you're having a drink, but it really doesn't have anything alcoholic in it. It's fun.
Oh, great. I'm going to get your book.
We should make that happen.
I am definitely going to get your book, and I'll make sure to put the link on where to find your book in the show notes as well.
Oh, fantastic. The hot toddy is a good one.
I'm one of those people that evening wine always was keeping me up at 3:30 in the morning.
Yep.
I'm sure you have tons of sleep tips for your patients, and I was wondering if you could share those with the audience today.
Sleep is something that's been difficult for me over the course of my lifetime. I have a lot of energy and a lot of positivity, but I tend towards that worried, anxious state. I'm definitely one that if I'm awoken in the middle of the night, it's not what wakes me up that keeps me up. It's the mind, really. And it's sometimes I'm thinking about stressful stuff, but most time I'm thinking about the schedule for the next day or a patient I saw. And it's not really helpful to be thinking about Mrs. Smith at 3 a.m. We need to be sleeping. A couple of things that I find really helpful is having a regular wake time. And this I learned from my friend, Dr. Shelby Harris, who was my sleep therapist for a while and helped me understand this very cool concept of cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which was recommended actually by my primary care doctor. And I just happened to find her, and she's been a good resource over time. One of the things she taught me was a regular wake time. That just really helps set the circadian rhythm. So our circadian rhythm, that up and down of cortisol, of melatonin, of hunger, of satiety, of up and down through the day, wakefulness, sleepiness, is really regulated by our wake time. I make a habit of almost every day getting up around the same time and not really sleeping in on weekends. And what that does for me is it allows me to feel tired at the end of the day at a very predictable time. And that, I think it really means a lot to my body as far as regulation of sleep rhythm. I've also really gotten into using meditation and breathing exercises. It's not that I'm plugging in my headphones and doing a meditation app. It's more like stopping this circuitous rhythm in my head and coming back to a rhythm in my body. And the breath is the easiest one to use. I'll maybe trace a circle across my abdomen and just sort of like time it to inhales and exhales. Often I can get myself out of that crazy brain pattern and back into my body and realize, hey, Kate, you are sleepy enough to fall asleep again and go to bed. And so those are some of the tricks that I use. But I mean, we could talk about sleep for another 4 days.
I know.
I've got so much material on sleep. It's huge. If you can sleep, friends, if you are out there and you can sleep, prioritize your rest. And if you can't sleep, then that would be a reason to go see your doctor, because it's probably the most important of all the rhythms, I think, is to get proper rest.
I keep reading that, and it is frustrating. I got up at 3 and I think I fell back to sleep around 5.
Yeah.
It's frustrating.
It's brutal. I think so much this season of the year, too, with fall coming, is so uprooting. There's so much dryness. You can see it in the weather. The leaves are all over the place. They're dropping and there's wind. And some days you wake up and it's 50 and then by the end of the day it's 75. You know, it just changes so much. And that change in our bodies is also hard to weather. It's only natural that it appears in our sleep. It's just sad that it appears at 3 a.m.
I know. It's getting better, but I still have those nights.
Yeah.
I've been following you on Instagram. You offer a detox program. I'm super curious about this topic. Why people should maybe detox, what it would entail.
I find the detox to be a really great way to reset the body rhythms. And I started doing this maybe now 4 years ago with patients, because I also found that I could see someone in the office, but I didn't actually know what their meals looked like or how they were actually resting their bodies. I wasn't there in real time with them. And what's fun about the Dr. Katie Detox is that for 10 days of time, I'm literally a text message away, along with my trusty health coach that I work with. Between the two of us, we are able to field so many questions from people that allow them to have this very personal experience, but also the support of trusted resources in how the body naturally detoxifies. We don't need to do fancy juice cleanses or restrict ourselves, because our body inherently really knows what to do. It's just that we don't give it the set of circumstances it needs to succeed on a regular basis because we're busy. We shortchange those things because they're not so convenient. It's really an opportunity over the course of 10 days to reset the rhythms that feel good to you. For me, it might be coming back to a little bit more regulation with my sleep, and maybe it's a little bit less exercise because what I do is too tough on my body. For you, it might be really thinking about putting down some of the packaged foods and coming back to more fiber-rich foods. It could depend what someone is really experiencing in their life, their symptoms, how they're feeling, and then what they think that they need. Honestly, it's really amazing what the body can do without medication over the course of 10 days. The arc is so important of that 10-day time frame because that's when you just start to see the changes. It takes 3 weeks to break a habit, but it definitely takes 10 days for you to see the real effect of your efforts. It's really amazing when it comes to energy, to sustaining fatigue during the day, to not feeling like you need to take a nap after a meal, to having less joint pains, to losing a little bit of weight around your middle or some bloat. The brain fog is a huge one that we hear about people improving upon. That's why I enjoy the detox experience, even personally. It's a very good reminder to me that, hey, once a season, I need to get back to what feels good in my body so that as more things are added to my plate, I can actually improve my ability to manage those stressors.
That is such an interesting approach to a detox because in our mind, we always think of it as you have to take all this stuff out of your diet, you're juicing and all of it. And that scares me because
Yeah.
I know I wouldn't be able to function mentally with restricting myself that much.
That's right. And that restriction mindset, that diet culture mindset, I don't care who you are, there's no one that is immune to that feeling. Somehow as women, we are wired to really feel that culture. I really like to get out of that idea of restriction and more into that place of prioritizing and recognizing that everything in life is okay in the right amount. It's just that we often don't do the right amount of stuff because it's hard.
Are there any other online programs that you do for people that want to reach out?
Absolutely. The 10-day detox is the signature program and the one that I really love the most because I see the most shift with it. We also offer a 5-day intensive version of that, but it is intense. It's moving right into the changes and it's a much more self-supported as opposed to community supported and really a lot of time with me in the 10-day detox. I give a lot of lectures. I do that a lot. So those are available either in real time or experienced afterwards. Now that we're out of COVID, we're going to be getting into more real life stuff, like getting back in person, more retreats, more in-person experiences for those who might be on the Northeast corridor.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thanks.
I really wanted to just wrap things up with self-care. You touched a little bit on it, but I know you have your own self-care priorities that I would love for you to share.
I think self-care can take on the form of so many different things. And I think we tend to think about it being like, oh, I'm going to schedule myself a massage or I'm going to go get my nails done. And yes, that is definitely self-care. But I think self-care can be closer to home. When I think about my own self-care, I think about the things in my life that are non-negotiables, the things that even if literally the world is turning upside down, that I would prioritize. For me, daily movement in a gentle way is really important. So whether that's a walk or a strength class that feels really great, but it's not too difficult, or if it's a yoga practice, that kind of daily movement really helps me to feel like I've regulated my brain chemistry. I know because I have 3 people in my household who give me feedback on my mental health every day that I'm a nicer person when I move every day. That's a non-negotiable to me. It's something I prioritize in my life and in my schedule, even though the schedule is kind of nutso. I think for me, the other thing that really has shown to be very helpful for me is the regular bedtime. And I'm totally cool at the party being the kid who's like, yep, gotta go. It's my bedtime. Because I recognize that my brain needs that rest. We spend so much time every day partying in our brains, and we need to really clean up the party, let the dishwasher run, and settle down. Giving myself that space to allow for real rest is important. Whether it comes every night or not is variable, and I understand that. I don't attach to it actually too much. It happens when it happens. Being mindful about that is important. Those are my really big self-care practices. And trust me, I mean, I love all the other stuff too. If you could send me to a spa for 5 days, I'd be in heaven. I'd be just fine. But that's not really realizable for most people on a regular basis. Choose the self-care thing that's actually meaningful and closer to home.
I'm going to use the Dr. Katie strategy next time I'm at a party when I want to go home.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, Dr. Katie says I have to leave now.
100%.
I'm just going to say that.
100%. Just also think in your mind, nothing really great for your health happens after 9 p.m. It just doesn't. Like, think about what we're doing after 9 p.m. I mean, maybe if you're hanging out with your loved one and you're doing something fun like that, honestly, we're usually watching TV, drinking, staying up too late. We're not doing anything that great for our bodies. Better to go to bed and start over in the morning.
The Dr. Katie excuse. I'm using it.
There you go. We're going to hashtag that, the Dr. Katie excuse.
Right. This has just been delightful, and I have enjoyed this conversation immensely. I think it'd be a great idea for us to tell everybody how to find you.
Oh, absolutely. I have a private practice in Connecticut, and I can see patients who live in New York and Connecticut. So if you are local, I would love to see you. That's called Wellness Insights. Everything about me is on drkatie.com, including information about that, but also about my blog, which is called Dr. Katie's Life Kitchen, and anybody can subscribe to that, so feel free to do that. And I love being on Instagram. I think Instagram is a great way to connect with people, and it's just a lot of fun, to be honest. And I'm at DOCTORKATIE at Dr. Katie. Those are probably the main ways that people can find me. And then, of course, my book is available at all major booksellers. Plants First is the name of the book.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. We were able to pull this off early in the morning, and I'm so glad.
Oh, I'm so glad too. I hope you have a great day in Cincinnati. Thanks for making the time for me.
Katie, thank you for being here.
Okay.
Thank you. Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.